Hello and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host Ozan and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Danny, co-founder of Dogiz. Welcome to our chat, Danny.
Hi, Ozan. Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us all about the business. What is Dogiz? Am I saying the name right?
It's Dogiz, yes. It's very good.
Ease with dogs. That's kind
Exactly.
of fun. Right? So tell us all about the business. When did you found it? What's the story so far? And then we can take it from there.
Sure. So Dogiz, we have an interesting journey. We actually started, I met my co-founder in university around 6 or 7 years ago. We met in the startup class. Yeah, I was studying government and politics. He was studying economics. We both very quickly realized economists and politicians we would not be. And so I kind of adopted my dog Mufasa in my second year of university. And then kind of in our last year, as I said, I met my co-founder in the startup class, and kind of after university, I suppose, kind of was I suppose not like dissimilar to many students after university, kind of wasn't exactly sure what to do. Looked around, interviewed at a few places, and apparently found out I was totally unemployable. So I had to start my own business. But no, I think that kind of we started off as more a on-demand professional pet care services. So from our own personal experiences of living in big cities and small apartments with big dogs, often the struggle of, juggling between girlfriends, university, work, social life, often meant that a lot of the time the dog was kind of alone for long periods of time. And we kind of found that, if you depend on, a friend or, neighborhood granny or someone to kind of take out the dog when they do let you down, ultimately it was the dog that always suffered. So Dogiz actually began its journey as an application for urban dog owners to help manage professional pet care services. So it was on-demand dog walking, daycare, boarding, training, grooming, etc. So the idea was that you could come onto the app, connect with listed professional pet care service providers in your area, and then there was a whole booking system. You'd get live updates when the dog walk would actually come to your house, so you'd know if he'd been there, and could actually track the walk live in real time, so you could see how long he was out. And all the payment was done by, credit and debit card, kind of eliminating a lot of this kind of cash in hand nature of the business. So we started that and things were kind of going very well. It was then until kind of 2018, we kind of started expanding here in London. 2019, end of 2018, 2019, everything was going fabulously well. I think 2020, the January and February were our best months ever. I think we'd already smashed our Q1 projections just from January and February. And then, of course, March 2020, I don't know exactly the exact date, but it was, March 10th, March 15th, kind of COVID hit, and that completely shattered our business. The whole concept of our business was you're at the office, your dog's at home, let us take care of your dog. And obviously, we were doing hundreds of bookings a day, and we saw our numbers collapse by a little over 80%. Now I think probably like everyone, when COVID happened, we like everyone else was like, I'm sure this will be over in a week or two, in a month or two. And then kind of as the weeks kind of started to move on, and we kind of had lockdowns, and we saw a lot of our dog walking companies kind of close down, and, things kind of really became quite a struggle. Obviously we had to put people on furlough. We had to kind of try and ease and cut our costs where we could. We then kind of were faced with a very harsh reality of coming to our board and saying, look, either we shut up shop and we call it a day, or we go back to the drawing board and we build a far more holistic solution for all dog owners, not just the kind of small minority of those who are dependent on these services. And we wanted to build a far more technological platform that wouldn't have the same operational constraints that dog walking and on-demand kind of supply and demand operation that our previous business had. So that's kind of over the last 2 years, really, we went back to the drawing board and built the kind of new Dogiz 2.0, which is what we've released over the last few weeks. And it's been a crazy roller coaster. The new Dogiz app is basically AI enhanced platform that motivates dog owners to be more active with their dogs and rewards them with Dogiz coins, which they can use as discounts on our partners' products and services. So the whole idea is to kind of gamify and reward active dog ownership with this loyalty reward program that, as I'm sure you know, the rise of cost of living has obviously hit the pet world as well, like pretty much every aspect of life. And so what we wanted to do was to kind of help dog owners make more informed, better decisions about their dog, and reward them for this being more active with these Dogiz coins, to make it more affordable to take the best care of your best friend. So that's the kind of very quick doggy summary today.
Much appreciated. I think it's a good recap of what has gone over the years. Let me ask. You talk about the pivot that you've done. You remade this strategy. This is by no means a foreign concept for the people who are in the world of startups. But we don't talk nearly enough about what it actually feels like while you're going through that. So could you perhaps share if you've
Sure.
What did you feel or what did you think while you're making that strategy during that pivot?
Well, I think something I've always found and I've always said, and we've also, first of all, we've been very blessed and very lucky to have really amazing, supportive investors who truly believed in myself and my co-founder Alon. But I think part of the process of really when you're starting up a business, it's a weird blended mix, because on one hand, you need to have the arrogance to be able to say, I can do something better and different than anyone else. But on the same side, you need to have the humility and also to take your pride out of it, to look and say, when things aren't working, you can either stick to your guns and stay to these ideas and say, I'm going to stay gung-ho until the end, or you can listen to the market. And that's what we were kind of forced to do. So of course, at the beginning, it wasn't easy. And I think, and that's why I touched upon both Alan and I, maybe we were in a little bit of denial with kind of, COVID will be over soon. I'm sure things will get back to normal. And of course, it's not an easy change to make. But I actually think, although short-term COVID was horrible for our business, long-term, it was ironically the biggest blessing in disguise, not just for us personally as founders and for the pivot and change that we made, but as I'm sure you know, dog ownership soared in across the world. Dog shelters were emptied.
It is. So COVID essentially people spending more time at home. It helped.
Of course. And also people wanted, during lockdowns, if you had a dog, it was a good excuse to be able to actually get out and walk your dog. And I think we've seen, in the UK alone, there were 3.5 million new homes took on a dog just in COVID.
Wow.
So it was definitely, as an entrepreneur, it's sometimes tough, to kind of realize and admit when something's not working. Again, some of the things are in your control, some of them are not. Of course, obviously the pandemic was, it's nothing we could have done. And that's why it maybe would have been, me and Alan laugh, maybe it would have been an easier choice to just put our hands up then and say, you know what, this, global pandemics destroyed our business. Maybe we just need to put our hands in and give up. And maybe that would have been the easier choice. But you also have to sometimes be a stubborn, I joke, we're stubborn bastards, and you have to have belief in what it is that you're doing. And I actually found once we made that switch of, okay, we're going in a new direction, I actually found it kind of fell in love with the business again, because it was that kind of really exciting, fun part of creating something new. And again, it was also based on a lot of the feedback and knowledge that we've gathered, from having a community already, and for quite a number of years. And that's really, I found it quite inspiring. And I know my business partner, Alon, as well, was getting our teeth stuck into a new project, although obviously it was, still connected in the dog world. I found once we made that shift of you get over that, okay, it's not working, move on. When we moved on, I actually think it really was quite invigorating, because it kind of, in a way, felt that you're again at that beginning stage of starting something new, which is, of course, as you mentioned earlier, extremely stressful, but also I found, very exciting.
It's really interesting. It almost is like falling in and out of love, the relationship a founder has with their startup. When you
Oh my God.
start, it's really like it's just a new experience, thoroughly exciting, lots of dreams for the future. You can't wait to get
It's
that
a roller
started.
coaster. It's a roller coaster.
And then
And
you like reality hits you in the face, and then
oh my
you
God,
start to understand like
it
the
slaps you
first
so
dip.
hard.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's so funny. And what I always say, and I think one of my biggest blessings in that I've been so lucky in that my business partner, Alon, has not just become, one of my closest friends, but exactly that kind of confidant. And we joke that, sometimes we're each other's stress balls, sometimes we're each other's counselors. His wife jokes that I'm, his second wife, the amount we speak on the phone and, the amount we talk. But having someone with you along the way who's in the trenches to laugh about the good times, celebrate the good times. And sometimes it's super soul crushing. It's super depressing. There's nothing worse than working on a big deal that you've been working on a month and then the investor last minute pulls out, or the strategic partner, something happens that's more important than you and it collapses. And it's something, as you say, every startup founder goes through, of that roller coaster highs and lows, and having a good team and a business partner, although makes it so much easier and more palatable. Although, of course, as I'm sure you know, sometimes you just get slapped in the face and you're just like, why the hell do I not just have a regular 9 to 5 where I can leave my job and not care what happens to,
It's an easier way to make money, let me tell you that.
Definitely. That's for
I
sure.
really like the second falling in love aspect of the startup, because I think that's a very particularly special moment when you
Mm-hmm.
have a foundation of a business, you have fallen out of love, you've lost interest, and then you find yourself reinterested in that. So there's a kindling of that enthusiasm again. And
For
then you
sure.
come back for a second time. Now you're not starting from scratch. Now you have a better understanding of the market you're in. Now you have a better understanding of the challenges and opportunities. And you go in again with that optimism, but this time it's a more cautious optimism. Like, does that reflect your situation?
100%. And what I would say, and Alan and I, over our last, few years of journey, at the beginning and probably still, like, we made every single mistake in the book. Like, we screwed up so many times, whether it be with investor deals or strategic partners or just things that, marketing things or things that we thought we had right and we just got wrong. And, you muck up so often. It's part of, it's part of the game that we play. And we joke now that, and I think one of the biggest struggles, and I think especially around actually closing funding, that as a first-time founder, there's just nothing that can prepare you for the craziness that's going to ensue, no matter what field, what business, whether you're B2B, whether you're B2C, whether you're technology, whether you're whatever field of startup you are. Starting a business from scratch, raising funds, building a team, building a product, being product market fit, whatever field you're in is so hard. And, we joke, I joked with you obviously before we said that, I used to have a little bit more hair before I started. So aside from the stress, I think we mucked up so many times because of the fact that we were first time founders that had no idea. And, hopefully, please God, will be a success. And the next time, I think there are so many lessons that we learn in, the hard way, that, I hope at least next time to be able to avoid these, these pitfalls and these mistakes. But I also think that ultimately the way people view failure is sometimes a little bit skewed and a little bit wrong. I think, especially in the startup world and kind of what you touched upon about kind of falling in love again. And I think failure is part of the process. And I think we sometimes stigmatize it as a very negative thing of, oh, he failed. And I think if you judge it in that sole prism of a success fail in a specific task that you're trying to do, it's very easy to just shun it off and be like, okay, he failed, that's it, it's over. But if you actually learn from that failure and take the lessons it taught you and take that knowledge and throw it into that new project with as you said, with the lessons learned and use it to kind of build on the experiences that you gained, I think it's a real mental shift that it took me a while as well to look at, that failing in and of itself is not a bad thing. I think if you're not learning from your failures and you're not taking the things and you're trying to do the same thing 1,000 times and it's not working, that for me would be a failure. But I think the failure is more a failure to adapt and change and try something new and use that knowledge to really push through success in another way or field or however it might manifest itself.
Yeah. So I learned to juggle last year. And you might be thinking, why is this relevant? Something that really inspired me when I was learning was I came about this YouTube video of a teacher who's teaching juggling, and they said juggling is about dropping the ball. It's not about the act of keeping the balls in the air at all times. It is about actually dropping the ball. So if you're going to juggle, you should be okay with dropping the ball, right? And it's like incredibly deceptive, but it's incredibly powerful, I think, this way of approach. Amazing. It's just like this game people play where they seek out rejections, and whoever gets the most rejections that night kind of wins. It reframes the game, right? So you are going to drop the ball. As a startup, you are going to fail and so on. And having that perspective, I think, is really helpful. But at the same time, we are not living in a bubble. So we are really affected by how society perceives us, I think. And in a lot of ways, especially as we are the Startups of London podcast, we are focused on this market, not the international audience, perhaps, is what we care about is how failure is perceived within the UK, especially within London and within the professional circle. So what do you think about that bit? How do you think people perceive founders who have built a business, worked on it for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, failed, learned some skills? This might be in marketing, tech, finance, operations, and all other aspects of the business. And how does the society and work life value them? Do you think, and this goes, I think, both ways. One component of it is, do they value them emotionally, perhaps? And the second is, do they value them financially, as in, do doors open in terms of job opportunities if they would like to go back to work? Or are they seen as indeterminate permanent outcasts who will never make it to corporate life? What do you think?
Well, yeah, that's why I think, as you mentioned, it's the perception of startup success, which I think is fundamentally flawed. I mean, right now, the kind of the success, which startup success and which startup failed is kind of measured typically on quite a binary scale. So it's, did he set up a business and did he sell the business, or did the business close down? And of course, in a very simplistic way, it's very easy to say, okay, this guy started up a business and sold it for 100 billion. He's a success story, and then it's very easy to look at a guy, he started a business and, they got some revenues, but then they ran out of money and it failed. It's very easy, of course, to say, the one who sold his business for 100 billion is a huge success and the one who failed is a huge failure. But I think it comes down to the journey along the way. And I think, as like with anything, when you're coming, I suppose, in an interview, and look, I've no guarantee that my business is going to be a success. In fact, if we look at the statistics, the statistically more chance that my business is going to fail than my business is going to succeed. If you look at the statistics, there's more chance I'm going to close down than sell my business for $100 billion. But I think it's about what you've learned along the way and the people you've met, the investors who've believed in you, building that network. I think that, and going on the journey is priceless. And I've had a few people who've, gone on and done MBAs at amazing schools or Harvard, Cambridge, and they said, when I went and started my business, even an MBA and a business master's and all these things, nothing could have prepared me for what I actually learned along the roads. And I think what you can learn in a classroom, in a theoretical point of view, doesn't incorporate or encapsulate the emotional lessons that you learn from failing and from mucking up, because it's very easy when you get a maths question wrong, but when you're actually making the wrong decision and it impacts your business, you learn the lesson in a much deeper and more powerful way than merely, getting an exam question wrong. So I do think that people the way people perceive success and failure is skewed, and it is kind of based, as I said, on that paradigm of whether you know your business was sold for a lot of money or it wasn't. And I do think that founders, by definition, of even the ones who have failed, it takes a lot of courage to go out and start something new. It takes a lot of balls to go out and say, I tried something and it didn't work. It takes a lot of balls to go out and own your mistakes. And not a lot of people can do that. And there is, you know, I joke some of my friends, you know, although my friends, of course, work hard in the corporate world, and, you know, they sometimes also have crazy hours and, you know, but the life that they live in a way, I'm kind of is an easier life than that of an entrepreneur. So I don't think an entrepreneur who's necessarily failed can then never make it in the corporate life or could never make it in any other walks of life. If anything, I think having an entrepreneurial spirit and mindset is the biggest asset to a business, because you do want someone who thinks out of the box. You want someone who's a go-getter. You want someone who will, you know how to, think with what we call kind of like a big head, not just come in a 9 to 5 and tick the boxes and do what they need to do. So I would always encourage, and I think people who, you know, if you've started a business and failed, I don't think that means you can never make it at Goldman Sachs or in the banking world. I don't know. I think if you've learned the lessons and you've learned how to sell your business or sell yourself, then I think at the end of the day, everything is a sales game. And so if you know how to sell your business, in a way, you know, when you're in an interview, you're selling yourself. And so someone who's been out there and sold their business, whether to investors or to partners or to corporates, and has managed to successfully do that, for me, this shows obviously some sort of sales skill that at least I would believe gives me confidence to make that they could make it and do it in, you know, the big corporate world.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. But I also think there's a difference between someone, a founder. So because we are living in an economic system whereby we are integrated to such an extent, we have to be a part of it one way or the other. And I think there's a difference, a categorical difference between scenario A, a founder stopped their startup journey, and then they're perceived as this gem, whereby as other startups, other people, other organizations, medium-sized, larger, are competing to poach this guy. And on the other hand, scenario B, where they're like quite skeptical about this person. Okay, he's like a entrepreneur, we get it, but we don't know what he has done. Like, we don't know if his skills would be a match, and then they are really not interested in getting that person and an opportunity in a different environment. Now, I think the difference between the two scenarios is it kind of goes back in time and changes how people appreciate, how people are willing to start being an entrepreneur. Because in scenario A, you have kind of like an insurance, right? Because of your experience, because of your value, you know that you will be valued even if your startup does not succeed. Whereas in scenario B, it's kind of like a win or lose all type of a scenario. But you win, you're this incredible person, genius, successful, founder of businesses, amazing entrepreneur. And if you do not make it, you're this imposter. And I think we are closer to scenario B, in my personal opinion, than scenario A. And I think that is exactly what is hurting the startup ecosystem in London. What do you think about it?
Maybe, yeah. Again, I thankfully, I haven't, Dogiz was doing well enough that, I haven't interviewed for any big corporates.
I hope you never have to, yeah.
And I hope I never have to. And I do think
But, there are a lot of founders, sorry to interrupt, there are a lot of founders who have been founders and compared to, for example, 2015, 16, and a few years back, a lot of people who have started one startup and failed are in the economy now compared to 5-10 years earlier.
I'm sure that's definitely become more popular, and I think that's one aspect of it. And yeah, I think I think sometimes entrepreneurs or founders one reason maybe why big corporate might be a bit skeptical is I do know and other founders, who've set up businesses. And once you've been a founder, it is very hard to go and then work for the man or work for someone else. Once you have had your own business and that autonomy to be able to make decisions and make things happen faster and be in charge of your destiny, I do understand why sometimes corporates might be a bit skeptical. Some personalities aren't suited to work in the big corporate environment. I don't necessarily think that's exclusively true of founders, but I do think that in general, by nature, some founders might maybe go, when you're used to being the economy and making the decisions for the business, and all of a sudden you go work and you're just part of a chain, that I can understand why that would be hard. I'm sure if I think about it myself, I'm sure I would, probably struggle if I was just a little, key in a chain of, 100 different keys above me. That I can imagine would be quite frustrating. But with the whole thing of success and failure, I think, even now with, just the other week when, Adam Neumann with obviously with the WeWork, with him now raising, I think it was like $200-300 million for his next venture. And there was whole outcry of how can
was it
people,
like We Live or
We Live? I can't remember exactly, but it's some sort of social housing kind of
I think
kind of WeWork. And I also saw so many people giving this outcry of how can people invest money in him, and this guy did this and that. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think what he built was incredibly impressive. He changed the co-working space forever. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of what happened at WeWork and what he did wrong and the cult personality and all the, I'm sure there's a lot of criticism which is justified, and I don't really know enough about it to make an opinion. Yeah. What I can say, obviously, from a founder is this is someone who went out from nothing, he was an incredible salesman, managed to raise a lot of money to build and do something that changed the working environment. It changed, co-working space. How many companies springed off now? Again, how he managed his company's finances and the leases and all of that.
That's a good point, actually.
That's nothing. I have no idea about it. But what I found really inspiring was that, okay, this was a guy who built a company from scratch to one of the biggest household names. He changed the co-working space, the office space entirely. And yeah, okay, maybe towards the end he mucked up. Maybe he did things wrong. I don't know. Again, as I said, I don't know the ins and outs. But the fact that he was then able to go back and for a completely new idea, although from my understanding as well, has some sort of co-working or co-shared living experience, the fact that he was able to go out and raise $300 million on an idea shows to me that people, failure does not have to be the be all and end all. And just because you mucked up once is not a guarantee that you'll muck up again. And if you fail and learn from it, and who knows? Again, as I said, I'm no investor, and I don't know the ins and outs of how WeWork was handled. And towards the end, obviously, I know the famous things are they went from 40 billion to I know it was 7 billion, but no one talks about things that he started a company from scratch that got to a $40 billion valuation. Like, that's insane. It's amazing. And I saw a lot of lashback of people, criticizing how can these investors give this guy money and all of these things. And it kind of made me think that, yeah, first of all, I don't necessarily think that WeWork was a failure. He might have failed in things towards the end. And as I said, I don't know enough about it. But from just the conceptual point of view, he started a business from nothing. He got it to an amazingly high valuation. And then for whatever reason, it went down considerable amount, but still a lot higher than it was when he started. And he disrupted the entire industry. He changed the whole office space mentality. Like what co-working spaces was a completely foreign concept till WeWork came. How many now?
That's kind of the bets people are taking, right? As investors, they see a trajectory of a change in how we work, how we live.
Exactly.
And then, like, not just for co-working spaces. In the case of Dogiz, for example, it's how we interact with pets, how we expect services around pet ownership and all other things. But because running out of time, I just would like to ask you one last question.
Sure.
What do you have in the horizon as the big milestones for Dogiz? And with that, let us end the podcast.
Sure. So we've signed kind of, now said with the new Dogiz 2.0, the idea is really to kind of help incentivize and motivate dog owners to be more active with their dogs and reward them with discounts on premium pet products and services. So in Israel, we've now signed a deal with Nestle and Purina, which is, Nestle are monsters in the food business. So
yeah, amazing.
In the dog world. Here in the UK, we're extremely excited. Last week, we announced launch with with Harrington's, which is one of the largest and most trusted UK dog food brands. We're now working on some very big deals across the globe. We're speaking with some big US e-commerce players. We're speaking with some big Asian e-commerce players. And the idea really is to kind of help these brands build a kind of loyalty platform that motivates their dog owners to be more active and ultimately uses dogs' data to make AI-based recommendations on the best products or services suited to your dogs based on what other dogs of similar breeds and similar ages are using and enjoying. So the idea really now, we've got a lot of big partnerships that we're working on, is to really help dog owners make better, more informed decisions, and also to help brands better understand who their dogs and who their customers really are. So we've got a lot of the exciting things. And the main kind of exciting feature that we have now is Dr. Poop. So you can take a picture of your dog's poop and instantly find out if it's healthy or not. We're now working on a few other kind of AI, digital image-based analysis that can help dog owners, make better, quicker, informed decisions without having to necessarily run to the vet every time they panicked and something's happened. And especially now with the rise of cost of living, we want to make it more affordable for dog owners to take the best care of their best friend. And I think we've been inspired by our dogs and the community that we've built. And I know you said you're not yet a dog owner, but we're hoping, and maybe after this call, you'll change your mind.
Why not? Maybe in the future. Yeah.
Maybe that's in the future. And as I said, for us, that, we're really excited about the next stage in dog ownership. I think over the last 15, 20 years, you've had what many people are calling the humanization of pets. So we've seen, the way we interact with our dogs is drastically different to our parents' or grandparents' generation.
Oh.
Where the dog used to be something who just lived in the garage and, ate a bit of chicken from your supper and that was it. And now we've really seen that humanization of people, really believing their dogs are members of their family. People buying their dogs Christmas presents, or people, all sorts of different ways where we've seen that. And I think the next stage for us is really this digitalization of pets and using and understanding data, specifically health data about dogs, to enable dog owners to keep their dogs happier and healthier for, hopefully a much longer lifespan.
Danny, thank you so much for joining this chat today.
Ozan, thank you so much, my friend. It was a real pleasure. And I'm looking forward to many more discussions soon too.
Hopefully. Thank you.